What's up, guys? RotoZap here, and today we're gonna go over my top 5 things that I would like to see changed coming into next year of Wizard 101. So, credit where credit's due. Awesome the Sauce kind of like literally just made a video like this, and I saw it and I was like, oh, I like a lot of what he said, but there's a couple things that I want to add on, and a couple things of my own that are very different than his. So I kind of just want to make this video for that. And yeah. So 2018 was a pretty interesting year for Wiz. We got a huge graphics update for Wizard City. We got uh, a huge balance change to PvP, which was like making Juju not as like powerful, I guess, because it's really not even. I don't know anyone that Juju spams in PvP anymore, but there was a lot of things that King's Isle did to make an attempt to make the game better. So that all being said, I think it is worth it to make a video like this, hoping that they see it and hoping that they implement some of the changes. So that is what this video is about. But without further ado, let's get right into it. So the very first change I want to be made is rather controversial, to say the least, because I don't know if everyone's going to really agree with this. I want the drop rate for lore spells to be increased, or really not so much that, but just make lore spells more accessible in general. Now, I know that people want things in the game that are hard to get. I know that people want parts of the game to be hard to obtain or require many, many hours of farming for, but I really don't think that spells should be part of that group. I totally agree. There should be gear that's very hard to get. There should be powerful gear that gives the player an advantage in PvP and whatnot. And it requires hundreds of hours of farming or whatever. But I really don't think that spells should be grouped in this category. Because, the problem is people just don't have the time to be farming lore to be getting spells. It's just I don't physically have time. Like, it can take me 100 runs to get a spell from lore, and by the time I've spent 100 runs on lore, I've already used up maybe 3-4 hours of my time. And I wish I had that amount of time to just like sit there and do lore, but I don't. So it just doesn't work for me. And on top of that, even when you do get a spell, most likely you didn't get the 1 or 2 spells that you really wanted. So now you've wasted all this time for nothing. You got a spell that's completely useless, and you've wasted a ton of time. And the only thing that even is decent about what just happened is now there's one less spell for you to get next time. I don't like the way that works. So I've come up with 3 different possible solutions to this, because I know that just straight up increasing the drop rate isn't, no, not everyone's going to be happy with that. So let me get into them though. So first one, yes, I do want the drop rate increased, because hear me out. If they increase the drop rate so that you're getting a spell typically between 10 to 15 runs, I mean, that's still taking, even if you've got like a max storm with you, that's still going to take like a half hour to an hour. And at least then when you get a spell and it's not the one you want, you're going to get another one relatively soon, so it's not as bad, right? But my second suggestion is to make more bosses drop spells, because there's a couple spells that are offered from the lore master that are actually from other bosses as well, and it makes way more sense to farm those bosses, because when you get a spell drop from those bosses, it's going to be the one that you were going after, because they only drop one spell. For example, Myth. Ninja Pigs is a really good spell for Myth. But they don't have to farm lore for it. They can go to Koto in Mushu, which is way easier and way faster to run. And when you get the spell dropped, it's going to be Koto. Or I'm what? No, I'm sorry. It's going to be Ninja Pigs. So it's just really good. And I wish that we had more things like that, because there's so many, like, they keep adding more and more of these drop spells, and it just makes your chances of getting anything that you really want from Lore Master lower and lower, because there's so many more other spells that you just don't need on that particular character. And my third, and this one's the most outlandish of the three to suggest, but I think it'd be pretty cool, would be to just have a very long and tedious quest line to unlock certain spells. So, for example, if I wanted the Lore Master spell, maybe my man El Hazared has a quest for me that's going to take like 5 days to complete. But when I do it, I'm going to unlock Lore Master. I mean, honestly, I would like that a lot. You know, maybe have a quest line that's very long, is going to take the player quite a bit of time, but in the end, rewards the player with a brand new spell. I think that that would be a cool system. And I think that it would still have the grinding aspect to it, and it'd still be like, yeah, I got this quest done, you know, but at the same time, it would make it so that people aren't farming lore for like weeks on end only to get nothing and feel like they've completely wasted their time, because it burns you out. I farmed lore for like 12 hours straight on my life just the other day, and I basically spent the entire night doing this. Like I didn't get any sleep that night. That's all I did. And I don't really know why I did that. I wasn't tired. But it was so frustrating to not get anything I wanted after spending that entire night doing it. But that's all I've got to say. I really think that lore needs to be re-looked at. I think it needs to be redone in some way. I just really want spells to become more accessible, especially for newer players, right? Because you need lore spells in PvP. They're very, very powerful spells. And it sucks that the barrier for entry of PvP is having spells like this. And it's not like gear where, you know, it's gear, so you got to farm for it. And there's a lot of mixing and matching you can do with gear. Maybe you don't want a certain piece of gear. It's a spell. You kind of need the spell. There's no ambiguity with it. It's like, it's a spell. So there's no mixing and matching. There's no strategy. It's just you either have the spell or you don't. And I don't like that because spells are pretty hard to get, especially on a newer account or a newer player to the game. So that's all I got to say about lore. Let's move on to my next suggestion. All right, so my next point that I want to bring up is I want to see King's Isle more involved with the community. Now, this year I think that they've made some really great strides to trying to be more connected with the fans and actually listening to what people have to say. But, I mean, outside of a couple things, like that whole Crowns event fiasco was so bad. But besides that, they've made a lot of really great strides into better understanding the community and being better connected with the community. And I want to see them continue to do this because Wiz is like 10 years old now. It's a very old game. And there's a lot of people out there in this community that have very fresh ideas for the game. They just need to be heard. You know, there's a lot of people that can really spice up Wiz and really make it a much more new and better looking and playing game. But those people just have to be heard. So, you know, and they can't listen to everyone, of course. That's completely unreasonable to ask. But I think that they need to do a better job at looking at things from community, like the Feedback Friday type stuff. And when other content creators speak out against things, I think they really do need to pay attention and listen to what they have to say, because that's how they're going to keep their game alive. You know, if you keep the content creators happy, if you keep the players happy, they're going to be playing your game and they're going to be promoting your game. So, you know, it just makes sense to at least hear them out for what they have to suggest. So I really just think that they would be better off if they were more in touch with the community, especially because, you know, nowadays the Wiz community is rather close. It's, you know, not tons and tons of disjointed players that, all are just here, there, and wherever, and no one's really part of anything. Wiz is getting more and more of a close knit circle of community people, and now that that's kind of happening, I think Wiz really needs to step in and be a part of that community because it's going to make their game better off. It's going to make Wiz survive for longer, and it's going to make everyone more happy. And really, as a game developer, I would assume that that would be your end goal, is to make people happy. Now, obviously, money's a thing, and if people are happy, they're spending money. Enough said, right? Obviously, if people are playing your game, they're spending money on it. So just keep that in mind as well. But my next point here is one that I'm not quite sure how to really work, but I've got a couple ideas for it. So I want to make either a new ranked ladder or modify the existing one where shadow spells are not allowed in PvP. Shadow spells have been a very, very hot and cold part of PvP. Some people like them, most don't, and I'll explain why. So PvP is supposed to be the competitive end game content for players. It's supposed to be for people that want a challenge, they want something that is competitive, and they want a player versus player system. Now, obviously, practice is fine. Keep shadow spells in practice, right? Or maybe when you're making the rules for the PvP match, add a new option that says no shadow spells. Simple as that. Very, very easy fix. But in regular ranked PvP, it is so annoying when you lose a match because a player is playing brainlessly, but they just keep getting shadow pips over and over again, and they keep spamming these incredibly powerful shadow spells over and over again. It sucks. It really sucks. My Storm just yesterday lost a match because I was winning and he was very low in health. He was down to 1500 health. He was on the defensive the entire game, and I was second. So being defensive wasn't that hard. And he won because he got 3 shadow pips in a row. And since he was basically just shielding the entire game, he was full on pips and was able to just spam Weaver. He literally used 3 Weavers in a row. It's ridiculous. And the Weaver puts up a 75% shield. I can't do anything about that. You think my Storm is going to be able to handle 3 75% shields? No. Especially because after the first 2 Weavers, I put on a set shield, hoping that he wasn't going to get another shadow pip. Because I actually could have won if he wouldn't have gotten a 3rd shadow pip. And, the Weaver did enough through my set shield. But, yeah, it was just very frustrating. And it makes PvP very uncompetitive and very unfun, to be honest. I don't even know if unfun's a word, but it's just not enjoyable when luck is the reason people are winning matches. And I think that that's how a lot of players feel. They don't want to see luck being the sole factor for why someone wins a match. And that's all shadow pips are. It's luck. It's who can get the most shadow pips and win that way. So this brings up an issue, though, because if we take shadow pips out of PvP, then that begs the question, will Jades I guess Jade Juju is not really going to be a thing anymore, but are Jades going to come back and be an unstoppable force? Shrike was put in the game for a very specific purpose, and it achieved that purpose. It gave offensive players a fighting chance against these Jade Jujus or Jades that have ludicrous amounts of overall resist, insane amounts of incoming, outgoing, and are basically impossible to win against from second. It's really unfair how powerful they are from first. So Shrike was kind of a way to balance that and help you pierce some of that insane amount of resist. But there's just not a good way of going about doing this, because if you bring Shrike back in PvP, if you say that like every spell is banned or whatever besides Shrike or Shadow Sentinel or any of those like Shadow Transformation spells, there's still an element of luck, and that's what people have been trying to avoid, because then people will complain that, oh, he got another Shadow Pip than me, and that Shrike is what won him the game, which is isn't solving the problem that much. So what we need to do, I think, and here's my suggestion for this, is maybe give each player 2 Shadow Pips at the start of the game, and don't give them any more. Like, make it impossible for them to gain Shadow Pips. So each player has access to Shrike twice in the game, and that's all they get. I think that 2 Shrikes is definitely enough to kill a Jade player from first, and from second, it's enough to give you at least a fighting chance so that the match isn't so one-sided, right? Because it's so bad it's so bad. You need Shrike to deal with Jades from second, you really do. But I think that giving them 2 is enough to kind of turn the tides here. And on top of that, 2 is also enough to maybe, I don't know, maybe you guys will think that this is stupid, but maybe like allowing shadow creatures in game. I don't know how you guys feel about that one, but maybe allowing shadow creatures in game would be interesting, and that would give enough for a shadow creature. So maybe the player could decide if they want a shadow creature or 2 Shrikes or something. Maybe if they're a Jade, they want that shadow creature and they want to be able to hit. But I don't really know. These are just suggestions. Let me know in the comments how you guys feel we could fix PvP, because I don't think shadows are a healthy part of the game at all. They're really not. They add a lot of elements of luck. They make the game very unenjoyable, and it makes PvP lose so much merit for being competitive, because like I wish I could say, like, I have a pretty okay amount of rank on this character, like a 1668. I wish I could say that that's an achievement, I wish I could say that that's really good, but there's so much luck involved with PvP, I can't. Like, it just doesn't, I don't know. Like, the luck of your deck not failing is already high enough. We don't need to be adding Shadow Pips as well. So, those are my suggestions for Shadow Pips. I don't think they need to be in PvP. They really don't. PvE, I don't care. Keep them in. But definitely for PvP, we can't have them in. They're not a healthy part of the game. They don't promote strategy or competitive fairness. It's literally just luck and brainless use of overpowered spells. So that's all I've got to say for Shadow Pips. I really think that these need a rework of some form. As to what that is, I don't know. But I've made a suggestion. In the comments, please let me know how you guys think that we could incorporate not allowing Shadow Pips, but at the same time making it so that Jades don't run rampant, and then we have an entirely new problem, because jading also shouldn't be the dominant strategy in PvP. I think that that's not really good either. So I don't know, let me know in the comments what you guys think, but we're gonna hop right in to our next point. All right, so for our next one, this is an interesting one, and I don't think people really talk about this anymore, but I want to bring it up because I really think that bringing a couple retired spells back is going to make the game a lot more interesting, and I really want to see these make a return. I think they're super, super cool. So the first one I'm going to bring up here is Lifebane. So Lifebane is a very interesting spell. It says for 3 pips, it's a death spell that dispels the next incoming life spell. Now, this works very similar to a like regular dispel, but it's a trap. So it works a little different and it allows for some more interesting gameplay. Because let's say you're playing in a 2v2 and there's a Jade healer and a, I don't know, and then a hitter or something. And the hitter's low on health. You know that the Jade's going to heal them, so you slap a life bane on them. So maybe the guy that was healing expected you to life dispel him, so he used a life spell on himself or something. Nothing would happen. He would just use the spell, but then the life dispel trap would still have to come off on the other player. And the other interesting thing too is that some players may pack a couple cleanse charms in their side deck or something. You can't cleanse this. You can't cleanse this with that because it's not, it's not a regular debuff. It's not like a charm, I think they're called. It's not a charm. It's considered a trap. So you can't do that. You're gonna have to actually take it off. So it just leads to some interesting plays and a few more options for Death Wizards, which they don't really have. So I just think that it really isn't overpowered, especially with the Dispel Shields, and I don't know why this was really taken out, but I really do want to see it make a return. But the next one is Dampen Magic. This is one of the coolest spells I've ever seen in the game. And for those of you who say that Balance doesn't have a good bubble, they do. It's just not available in the game anymore. So Dampen Magic is a aura, or not aura, but Balance bubble. I mean, you can see in the little, what is it, like this little GIF thing on the side. But for 3 pips, it limits all casters to a maximum of 3 pips. That is so insane. That means that if you had all power pips, the maximum amount of like total pips you'd have is 6 pips. So I don't even know what that would do for a match. That would be so interesting to see. Especially if we also implemented the ban on shadow spells. This would be really wild. But little caveat with this though is if a wizard already has above 3 pips, so like for example, let's say you've got 4 power pips and someone casts Dampen Magic, you don't lose a pip, but you also don't gain any pips either until you go back below 3. So anyone that is above 3 pips is fine, they stay there, but they just don't gain any new pips for the round. Now, I don't know if we really want to give this spell to Balance if it came back, because I want this to be a trainable spell, and I want it to be PvP inclusive, because right now it clearly says no PvP, but I want this to be able to have use in PvP, because it's really cool, but I don't know if we want to give it to Balance. If it comes back as a regular spell, I don't know which school I'd suggest giving it to, but I don't think Balance should get this, to be honest. This has way too much synergy with lore, and I don't think that that's the best idea. I think it's a very cool spell, and giving it to Balance initially makes perfect sense, right? Because Balance has a lot of like pit management type spells and things like that, like Mana Burn. So I think that initially giving it to Balance was a fine idea, like that's fine, but if it were brought back, giving it to Balance is probably a bad idea, especially because they can like Mana Burn into Dampen Magic, and oh god, it would be terrible. They can do a lot of things with Dampen Magic that I don't like to think about. So maybe not giving it to Balance, but possibly Death or something, because I mean that kind of goes along with the whole Death vibe, like because Death does a lot of disruptive things, so dampening everyone's magic seems pretty fitting for Death. So maybe giving it to Death, because they also don't have a lot of tools. Their only bubble besides the 4-pip one is Doom and Gloom. And I mean, Doom and Gloom has a use in high level PvP, but like not really. Because most schools at high level PvP don't heal, because they don't use masteries anymore, with the exception of like Balance and Life. but most schools are not healing. So I think that giving this to death would be a cool idea, and it would really spice up the game. I want to play in matches where I'm limited to a maximum of 3 power pips, and I also want to play where you can't use shadow spells. I think that those two things combined would make the spell so cool, and it would really spice up PvP. Because there's a lot of interesting shenanigans you can do with Dampen Magic, and you can be strategic about when you play it, Play it when your opponent has 3 pips. If you want to punish a balance wizard for spamming lore, well, while they're low in pips, use Dampen Magic and make them kind of reconsider things. But I don't know. Overall, I just think that Dampen Magic and Lifebane would be so cool to have as trainable spells in the game. And people are always complaining about how Death doesn't have anything, so it would give Death something if we made Dampen Magic for Death and gave them Lifebane. But that's all I've got to say about it. Please let me know if there's any other retired spells you guys would want to see in the comments. But I really don't think that these would break the game. I really don't. I think that they would spice up the game and make it better, but I do not think that they would break the game. If you disagree with me, let me know. But I really don't think that these would break the game. But yeah, that's all I've got. Let's get into my final suggestion. Alright, so my last and final point here is going to be making more of Wiz free. This is something that I really think everyone has been asking for so long. And, every time they come out with another world, it just makes more and more sense for more of Wizard 101 to be free. Because, think about it. It doesn't make sense. The only parts of Wizard 101 that are free right now are, like, the Commons, Triton Avenue, and Unicorn Way. And really, the only, like, gameplay you get access to is Unicorn Way and Triton Avenue. That's so minuscule. That's like a half hour to an hour of gameplay for nothing. Compare that to the hundreds of hours it's going to take to get to level 130, and then all you're going to give players is a half hour to an hour of spamming Thunder Snake. Like, really? It just doesn't make sense. And it's no wonder that people that are new to the game aren't really inclined to stay, because that's not you're not really enticing people. Like, that's lame. Like, the beginning of the game is boring. It's when you start getting more spells and you get to a higher level, that's when things get interesting, right? So I think at the very, very least, Kings Island needs to make Wizard City and Krakatopia free. I think that that's at the very least what they need to do, because then at least the player gets to see 2 worlds, 2 very different worlds. They get access to quite a few different spells, and they can really make a decent decision on whether or not they would like to continue playing. However, my suggestion is to give up to Mushu free. And I'm not saying like up to Dragonspire, but like have Mushu be included there. So you get Wizard City, Krakatopia, Marleybone, and Mushu for free. Now let me explain, because I know that sounds insane. But if you give the player until Mushu, right, this is going to create much more loyal fans, because it's going to take quite a few hours to get to Mushu and complete it. So if you have a player that's sat through this entire thing and they're in Mushu now and they complete Mushu, they're probably interested in the game, they're probably fans of the game now, and they're going to be very inclined to buy the $10 membership and continue to buy it, especially because like the first arc has a very interesting story and I like it, but it doesn't really ramp up until like the middle of Marleybone. That's when things get super interesting. That's when I was hooked, right? So if you let them play through Marleybone and through Mushu, and then right as things are like climaxing, right as you're like getting on the tails of the coattails of Malister or whatever, you're just chilling, saving the world and whatnot, and you're just about to find Malister and defeat him and go to Dragonspire, then if you're like, all right, now you got to pay, then people are going to be like, oh, but like I want to see what happens next, you know? People want to see what happens next. They're interested in the story, they're interested in the game, they want to keep unlocking spells. It's going to create a lot more dedicated and long-term fans of the game if you just make it more free and accessible to players to try, you know? Because even if you offer up to Mushu, like, that's still not a lot, you know? Because Wizard City and Krakatopia take very, very short amounts of time to complete. They're not big worlds at all. Marleybone's a pretty medium-sized world, and so is Mushu. Dragonspire is a bit longer, but that's why I don't want Dragonspire to be offered, right? But I think that Mushu, Marleybone, Krakatopia, and Wizard City are all very medium to low-sized worlds that, you're not giving up you're not like giving that much content up, Like, it's not like you're giving out Chrysalis Part 1 and 2 for free, because that's very long. I might be completely wrong with this, but, Chrysalis 1 and 2 feel longer than all four of those worlds combined. So I don't have the number of quests to back that up, but it just feels like it's way longer than all four of those worlds combined, just Chrysalis Part 1 and 2. So, and oh god, and definitely Imperia Part 1 and 2. Imperia Part 1 and 2 is so long. That has to be longer than the first four worlds, because it's just so much time. But yeah. So that all being said, I think that offering up to Mushu is going to really entice players. It's going to create dedicated fans, and I really think that it is a good business move in the long run for Wizard101 to offer up to the first four worlds for free. But King's Isle, like, if you really don't want to do that, if that's too scary for you guys to pull off, I understand, but just at least make Through Krakatopia free. At least. Just give us Krakatopia and Wizard City, please. That would be just, I feel like that's the bare minimum of what they have to do at this point, considering it's like coming on to 2019, the game's 10, 11 years old. There's so much more content out there. It's not like back in the day where there was only 5 worlds, and if you were to offer the first 4 for free, you're offering most of the game for free. Or even just offering Wizard City for free is offering quite a bit of the game's content for free. But things aren't like that anymore. We have many, many, many worlds with hundreds of hours of additional content. And I really want to see them make this change next year, because I promise you the fans will love you for it. You're going to get more people buying memberships in the long run, and you're going to create a much more dedicated and sustainable fan base by doing this. With that all being said, I really appreciate you guys checking out the video today. If you enjoyed it, leave a like, comment, and let me know if you agree with everything I said, maybe disagree with some of it, or you just have like different suggestions. Put your top 5 things that you'd like to see in the comments. But with that all being said, I really hope King's Isle check this out and give some consideration to it. But that's all I got for you guys today. I'll see you guys in the next video.